There's a great word for what's happening right now. It's called efflorescence. Have you heard that word before? It was a new word for me, and I get really excited when I hear new words. And efflorescence is about the blossoming and the blooming. There's also terms that go with masonry, but we're going to focus on the blossoming, because one of the things we're going to be talking about is how to embody wisdom. How do we live with embodied wisdom? How do we make an ally of our body, especially when it feels like we may have judged as betraying us? Or many of us grew up in a culture where our body was an afterthought, or our body was something that we were ashamed of, or our body was something that we did not delight in fully. We may have judgments about our physical form. We may have judgments about our gender. We may have judgments about all kinds of things that are related to the physical body. And I love this quote from Buddha: the body is your vehicle for awakening. And we live in a culture that wants, and a religious culture that very often invites us to leave the body behind instead of taking that journey within. And the journey within is where the efflorescence is, because the soul is waiting to blossom. The soul, which holds our deep wisdom, our deep intuition, our connection to spirit, to source, to God, to Goddess, all that is within us. And each time we decide that we're going to evacuate our bodies, we're leaving behind the great resource that is source. And so today we're going to talk about how to embody wisdom, how to live in a place that really honors what rises within us. And if we are not enamored or in joy about what is rising within us, then there may be an error of thought running a program in the back of our mind that has inhabited our life and has become so familiar that we haven't bothered to stop and challenge it. It doesn't mean that people don't have diagnoses. It doesn't mean that we don't get sick. It doesn't mean any of that. It is, in this moment, can I still love the essence that is me, the true selfless, changeless, eternal aspect that lives in here? And if I could allow myself to resonate fully with gratitude and appreciation for the physical body that I get to walk this earth with, if I can allow myself to live in that place, miracles begin to happen in unexpected ways, because I've stopped long enough to live here, to live in this efflorescence. And it is from that place that wisdom arises. Wisdom arises from within. Wisdom arises from the depth of the experiences that we've had, that the soul has registered, that we have placed in our divine economy. Our divine economy. What that means is, within us, all the goodness, all the positivity, all the delight, all the love, all the patience, all the beauty that we have ever beheld, all of the truth that we have ever known is in us. That is our divine economy. And the divine economy is only obscured when we let we'll call it the ego, run amok. When we believe that the world outside of our eyes owns us, when we have not allowed ourselves to be saturated with this depth of faith that knows that something within me is greater than all of this form. Something within me is more inspired than all the things outside my eyes. When we can move into the divine economy, when we can allow ourselves to live in that place and deepen the sense of peace and connection with Source, when we do that, oh, life is good. And then we know wherever I am, God is. We know wherever I am, Source is. I discovered that the G word, some people, that's a charged word. There's lots of different names for creator. Pick one, speak with that, because that is what is within. Wherever I am, creator is. So we're going to dive into how to embody wisdom. We're going to start with a little meditation. My new best friend Lily's going to come on up and do a little notes behind the speaking. The efflorescence. Invite you to close your eyes if that feels safe and comfortable for you. Otherwise, just soft focus the eyes and come home to your temple. Come home to your breath. There is nothing to change in this moment. No place to be. Just here, observing breath. Feeling the fullness of life within the physical body. Inviting the selfless, timeless fullness to arise within consciousness so that we might settle into our own divine economy. We feel our feet on the floor and we are grateful for the connection to the earth, for the vibrancy of this planet, for the liveliness of this planet. And we know that each step we take impacts this planet. And steps taken in love energize the planetary matrix. It is as if each step lands on a line that is going to be filled with light, that is going to ripple out and spread across the face of the planet, because we have allowed ourselves to be present in love. Notice the feet and bring the attention up to the legs, the strength of the legs that offer us so much promise and ability. And even if they don't work like they did when we were youngins, can we be grateful just now to have legs? Allowing ourselves to be in this body with breath, coming to our pelvis, feeling the seat beneath our seat, settling here. We bring our breath into our spine and our torso. We are welcoming the embodiment of the unique I am that each of us demonstrates. Here's our shoulders, our neck, our arms, our hands. Feel breath in the neck, in the shoulders, down each arm and fully into the hands. And there's the head which so often wants to chatter at us. Can we breathe some stillness into the mind? Inviting you now to come back to the heart center, the center of the chest, your heart chakra. Settle here with breath and with your mind's eye and perhaps with your hand on your heart center. Envision a blossoming tree, plant. Maybe it's a tree that leaves out, something in nature that is full of that efflorescence. and allow that to settle in the heart. And invite the awareness of that blossoming to add fertilizer to the divine economy, the appreciation of beauty, the appreciation of the riches of spirit, the appreciation of the eternality of spirit. Allow the breath to flow and rest here, knowing the sensation of a flowering from deep within. Find your breath again. Give yourself a big breath. I came across a quote from Hafiz that has walked with me for a while, and I want to share it with you. Hafiz was a Sufi mystic. What is the sign of someone who knows God? They have dropped the knife. They have learned to drop the cruel knife most often used upon their tender self and others. Yeah, that the note that we got from Willie about don't be a jerk. Basically, be kind, don't be a jerk. It's in that description. And yet, many of us have experiences in our lives where we stumble. We move out of that high-mindedness that so many of us understand. We get the idea that we get the concept deeply felt that our thoughts create things in the world, create realities. If you've studied metaphysics at all, you know that that's one of the basic premises, is that how we think impacts what we will perceive in the world. There's a description of this that projection precedes perception. What we're putting out in the world is what we're going to see. Projection, what we're putting out, what has filled, we talked about the thought atmosphere, what we fill our thought atmosphere with is projecting into the world what we believe the world is. And because we believe it, we're going to see it. And so we're invited as metaphysicians to be very clear about how we're holding our mind. In A Course in Miracles, it talks about thoughts don't leave their source. Allow that to marinate for a moment. Thoughts don't leave their source. So when we're feeling upset or we're feeling angry and we're doing a little bit of trying to get the pain out of our body by barfing it on someone else, because that's kind of what it is. We're spewing vitriol, whether we're doing it in our mind or whether we actually use the words. Those thoughts don't go out, they stay in our thought atmosphere, and that is what can obscure our thought. That is what can obscure our divine economy. When we have forgotten that every thought has an essence to it that is either going to bless or unbless the world. We begin to understand that this activation that goes on in my brain, in my mind, has a real impact. Now, our greatest ally that a lot of us forget about is our body. Because our body's going to respond to what we think. If we're thinking a negative thought and we have the comprehension that that's not going to leave me, that's going to live in me, because a thought doesn't leave its source. What I give away, I get to keep, in other words. So when we have created a maelstrom within us from behaviors and words and actions, things just went sideways, my brain just went that way, come back to center. The body will help us. If we're so busy denying our physical form and trying to be transcendent, air quotes, transcendent instead of immanent in this moment present here, if we're trying to get away from this moment, our body's going to find a way to drag us back. It could be tension in the belly. It could be that left knee that bugs me. It could be tension in the neck. It could be pain. It could be related to the diagnosis that is following us through our life at this time. The body speaks to the soul. The soul speaks to the body. The brain, the mind, that's saying, oh no, that can't be so. The soul's talking to the body, saying, oh yeah, they really need to get this. They really need to understand this. This would be very helpful. This is part of their primal lesson in life here. So when we begin to be able to read what's happening in the body, and we begin to honor it as an ally, as opposed to what many of us consider negatively about the body, if we begin to consider it an ally, we can start to address the background voices that have run for so long in our consciousness that we don't even recognize that they're there. We don't recognize the impact of the thoughts that we've held on to for so long that we think they're just part and parcel of who we are. And a lot of those thoughts came to us when we were little kids, and we took them in because mom and dad, or whoever were our parents, were our gods and goddesses. And they taught us things that they believed. And for many of us, those belief systems are not all filled with light and love. So I've told some of you have heard this story, but it was a pivotal moment in my life. I'm in the kitchen doing the dishes. It's after supper. My two girls are, I think they're about 6 and 4 at the time, and they're in their bedroom, which is right off the kitchen, and I hear them arguing. And I step into the room and I say, well, what are you arguing about? We're trying to decide who gets to play Mad Mommy. Yeah, it was a wake-up call that changed my life. I learned to be Mad Mommy from the mommy who raised me. And the mommy who raised me didn't know how to manage her anxiety, and her anxiety was a coiled snake in her belly. And when it would rise up, the only way she knew to manage it was to strike out. Then she felt better, and everybody else is hunkered down and is hiding out. And I had learned when I was young that if you're having that belly tightening, shoulders coming in, shrinking away energy, you gotta hide. Or you gotta attack, or you got to attack. So when I talk about Mad Mommy, what happens to your body? What do you notice? Can you feel it right here in the solar plexus? A lot of us are going to feel it right here in the solar plexus. Anger shows up around here. And if we can begin to address the fact that every once in a while I start feeling my breath get short. I feel my shoulders come forward. My belly's tightening up. I'm going into withdrawal. This is a posture of withdrawal. We want to hide the soft, inner, gooey center of us. And eventually, we end up something like this. If we can begin to address and allow ourselves to notice how our body organizes itself, we can begin to challenge the thoughts that are organizing the body in that way. We can begin to challenge the thoughts. And one of the ways to do it, I think we talked a little bit about this last time. Wait, W-A-I-T. What am I thinking? W-A-I-T, what am I thinking? When we have a reaction in our body, we're thinking something, and I've told this story before. I've had a wonderful time called the change of life. And I was having hot flashes. And there was a moment that I realized that every time I had a hot flash was right after I had a negative thought. My body was saying, look what you're thinking. And then it would go, I burst into flames. And it was one of the training grounds for rearranging how I look at the world, moving out of the judgment, moving away from my need to control other people's realities, moving away from the neediness in me that felt like I had to over-cooperate with the world to keep myself safe. And being able to acknowledge the body. The body wants us to make communion with the soul. The body wants us to find that deep well of wisdom that all of us have built over lifetimes. I say lifetimes. You may believe in only one life. I believe in lifetimes. We've been adding to this deep well of wisdom in us. And to move into that deep well of wisdom, we get to move past that which obscures that divine economy. And what obscures that divine economy is the ego voice that sees the world as what we have, what others have, what others think of us, how others behave, all of those things. When we are in that place, we have lost our divine economy. The deep well of wisdom is the ability, part of it is the ability to actually use our knowledge. Because as I'm speaking here, I'm seeing people going, yep, we know. We've heard it. We've seen it. We know a lot of things about the metaphysical reality. We do. Knowing isn't enough. Being able to apply it in life is what we are being asked to do. And wisdom is how to apply that deep well of knowledge in the world. And again, what can obscure that is a running pattern of thought that we haven't bothered to challenge. And usually the running pattern of thought in the background that we haven't bothered to challenge can be about whether or not we feel safe in the world, whether or not we feel loved in the world, or whether or not we are worthy. Abandonment's in there too. But those three things can very often take us out of our ability to be present in our divine economy. Part of wisdom is intuition. Intuition is heart-centered. Our intuition is heart-centered. It's best not to trip. How was your intuition? Excellent. It was, yeah. Heart-centered. Intuition is a heart-centered reality. It isn't woo-woo, it's a gift. And it is a voice that comes from that deep well of wisdom, from that efflorescence, that blossoming of soul that is trying to make our life in this life one that feels benevolent and like it is a blessing to the whole. Critical self-talk. We'll talk a little bit about that. When we were in meditation, part of the story is be still and know I am God. That's a psalm. That's from the Psalms, poetry. Yeah, that was in the Bible too. Be still and know that I am. In the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali talks about yoga is stilling the turbulence, the fluctuations of the mind. Psalms talks about be still and know I am God. Those are the same things in my book. It's like stilling the turbulence of the mind allows us to be still and know that we are in communion with our divine economy, with our Creator. So when we have critical self-talk, there's a challenge to this, because we can go through day to day and not ever stop to think about the voices that are running in our head. But again, if we bring our attention back to our physical body and how we are feeling, something's going to land and we can stop ourselves. Like in the pit of the stomach, you get something in the pit of the stomach, then we stop and go, what is that? And what was I thinking? What was I thinking right before that landed? Because if we can stop ourselves in the moment, and the body's always raising the red flag, going, stop here, look at this, stop here, look at this. When we can stop in the moment and bring our attention inward, and we can listen carefully, we will hear the error thought that preceded whatever it was that tightened up our belly. And the thing about error thoughts, if you've ever read any metaphysics, whether it's Charles Fillmore or Ernest Holmes, any of their books, they are so wordy because they're trying to explain spirit and trying to explain this communion that is available to us, trying to find the words to explore how to bring the message across. And error thoughts, when they run, a 5-year-old will understand them. They're very simple. They are not convoluted. And it'll look like I don't feel safe. I don't feel loved. I don't feel seen. I'm not heard. Those are the kind of messages that are running in the background, whether we know it or not. And if we can find it and bring it in front of us and speak it out loud, I'm not seen, or I'm not heard. And say it verbatim, because the words will rise up. Say it verbatim and recognize that has no power over me at all. And then we speak the truth. So this goes back to basic unity principles. You find the error thought, you deny that it has power, and then you speak what is true. I am seeing clearly. Even better, I'm not seeing. I see myself clearly, and I am connected. So we find a power statement that allows us to rearrange, reframe the error that we've been holding on to. And when we get it, when we find the error thought that's been rummaging around in the belly, under the skin, in the big toe, wherever the stress point is, when we find it, release it and speak power, the truth of power, or the power of truth into that place. Everything relaxes. Everything softens. When we have landed on it, we get an aha. So if you've ever had the experience of feeling tight and tense and getting a spiritual revelation, the divine economy opens. That deep well of wisdom is right there, and the words come out of your mouth, and you don't know where they came from, but you have the sense that, yeah, that's right on. The body will breathe. And I know you've all probably had this experience where you've been really tight. Someone says the right thing, you hear the right song, you open the page, and there's the right information on the page, and you go, that's a reset of the nervous system. So most of the time, when we are feeling that tension, that separation, that anxiety, that depression, when we're feeling those things, our nervous system is wound up too tight. So finding the ways to calm the nervous system can be a big help. Finding the error thought and restoring the mind's eye to truth will reset the nervous system. One of the other ways to do it is to find breath, to just come present with breath and let that be the meditation. 5 minutes of breathing can reset the nervous system, letting the thoughts float by like clouds, not attaching to anything, just letting them go. And then we can liberate ourselves even further. Yep, further's the right use of the word. Farther, further, farther, further, further. We can liberate ourselves even further by noticing when an emotion arises and realizing we don't have to address it at all. We just breathe into it and go, the truth of me is, maybe it is love. The truth of me is peace. The truth of me is resonant with beauty. The truth of me is, and then breathe. There are so many ways to work around the challenges that life offers us. But we are called. We are called because we're here, first off, because we heard a calling, but we are called because we have this understanding that there's a greater picture than the world outside of our eyes that is trying to emerge right now. And that we are beacons of light in this time where the thinking is very polarized and very concrete. We are living water that is breaking apart the concretions of thought. And everywhere we go, if we allow ourselves to be fully present, liberated from as many error thoughts as we can, that divine economy is going to rise within us, saturate our thought atmosphere, and bring us a greater sense of love, a greater sense of peace, and a greater possibility to help this world so in need of mercy and grace. That reading now. In the center of our being, in the truth and power we indeed are. In this moment we know we are whole and complete, and that there is only communion with the divine. And as we move through this day, we wear the mantle of the divine, however we understand that, into the world, bringing in to every place we enter, all that we encounter, the sense of sacredness, of holy oneness, of the presence that is a truth in us and in each other.